Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us. We are really excited to present today's webinar. I'm Andrew Swiler. I'm the CEO of Lanteria. Some of you might know me, some of you might not. Hopefully we will get to know each other over the next hour, and then in the future, hopefully we'll meet again. I want to introduce you to Andreas, who is one of our partners. He runs OneJar out of Cyprus, and he is going to be presenting us today something that is incredibly relevant in our difficult hiring and retention era that we're living in right now, in the engagement surveys, which we were just talking about before, is something I have never participated in, and I'm actually really excited to learn about this from Andreas, because awesome. For me, this is a new topic, and I'm eager to learn about it. So hopefully you are too.
Yeah. Hi everyone. Hi Andrew. Thank you for inviting me to discuss about this subject. I'm really passionate about the people, and positive engagement is something that we all should strive at work. And one of the very good tools we have as companies and managers is the engagement survey. So it's usually a very straightforward subject to talk about. It sounds very boring when you hear engagement survey, but hopefully we will dive into it and you will find something more interesting in this case. I will start presenting my presentation. Let me know if everything works fine.
Let's see. Yep.
Can you see my screen?
Yep, you can see the screen.
Okay. So yeah, you know who I am. So engagement survey, it would be interesting, Andrew, to hear from you. What it comes to your mind when you hear the word engagement survey?
So I've done this with clients, with customers. So we reach out a lot to customers. We want to know what they're doing. We want to know how they're engaged with our own product. So I can only imagine it's like taking a customer and applying it to your own employees. So how engaged are they in the company? How do they feel about the company right now? How do they feel about the direction of the company, or even just their own teams? I would assume that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's true. And when you ask a lot of people about the engagement survey, or when you talk with management and employees, it usually has something negative about it, because people are feeling this is something boring, right? So I will get an email, I need to complete a very long survey. It's usually faceless, so nobody told them what this is about. Probably some reports they will at some point see somewhere in their intranet. There's a lot of questions, right? You expect to have some kind of benchmarking with other companies to see where you are. You expect to consume a lot of time, and you probably expect that this is about people, right? So no tangible results. You will not see anything tangible here. It will just be fluffy people stuff that an HR person designed somewhere, and that will not really help us in the long run for our business.
There's no like KPIs to be able to benchmark this against that people can actually measure, or at least that's the assumption probably.
Exactly, yeah. And this is what we're trying to focus in this webinar, right? We're trying to get out of this way, these assumptions, and see what we can do to make the engagement survey add value in your organization. And from the HR perspective, and from the management, and from the employee perspective, really. So I found 3 pillars that we should focus on when designing the engagement survey. And the first pillar is the management alignment. So what we mean with management alignment is that the management of the company needs to know why they're doing this. It's not just the HR person deciding to run the engagement survey. It's top down, it's coming, is the CEO, it's all the management team saying, okay, we want to run an engagement survey. And we need to know why we're doing this. Sometimes some companies want to run an engagement survey just once because they have a big project. Something went really wrong, right?
Is that typically when companies start using engagement project or engagement surveys is when there's like a crisis or they've started to notice like negative feedback. Like it's never like things are going really well. Let's start seeing how we can do even better, I assume.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Usually you grow very fast and you went at some point and you're like, okay, now I lose touch with all of my people and let's run an engagement survey to see what's going on. It might be that a huge project happened that you say, okay, I feel something is wrong, or just getting negative feedback and you cannot pinpoint what's wrong and you say, I need to do this.
Okay.
But I will argue that it should be, if you are more than 10, 20 people, you should have at least an annual process of the engagement survey. And that we're going to see why later on. And you need to know, again, as management, okay, what I will get out of this, what will be the result of an engagement survey, and what we will do with the results. Because if you don't commit from the beginning, if you don't agree, okay, we're going to spend this time to ask our people will spend time to give us feedback, then we get something out of it, and we don't do anything about it, that's very bad, right? So it's something around management commitment and alignment. And when you set some timelines, you need to keep them. Lots of times they promise, we'll run an engagement survey and in 3 months we'll let you know the results, and 1 year passes and nobody knows what happened, and you don't even, the results are not even applicable by that time. So that's also very interesting. Good. Then the second pillar is communication. And this is how you involve the whole company in this process of the engagement survey and how you make it people-centric. So as we said, we are aligned, we know what we're going to do. And now we are communicating to everyone. You need to communicate first also to the middle management. So to the middle managers, so when they get questions, they know what to answer. So this is why we're doing this. This is what we'll get out of this, and this is the timeline. And then also middle managers need to be as passionate as you guys, the top management, going out to the people saying, hey, we need to get genuine feedback. And the reason we're doing this is for you, is to actually get you more engaged. Out of this, we will get a ton of initiatives running, either in your department, either company-wide, either just for yourself. So lots of what you are saying as an employee in this survey, it will become as an action for the whole company or your team. So the communication needs to happen. If an employee just received an email of an engagement survey or just received or saw the news in the intranet, that's not really something they're excited about.
Yeah, there should be like a little bit of an introduction and like everyone discussing what this is actually going to be about. Are you able to use, like, I guess, like you said, there always has to be a why. And one of the whys is like, what are we going to do with this information actually? Is it a good idea to communicate that beforehand? Like to say to the team, we want to do this engagement survey because this, or is it oftentimes you don't really want to guide the people too much? Like you don't want to restrict them to certain types of replies. Like what is the best way to approach this beforehand? Because people might just be like, well, what is this for? Like, what am I going to get out of this?
And it's totally right. You need to communicate why you're doing it, especially if you're doing it once, or if you're doing it every year. People will already know why you're doing this. They already know that because of the results, you're taking actions. Because of the results, things are changing. Their teams are changing. The way their manager is treating them is changing. So it's about communicating why we're doing the whole thing. Then they will know why they should spend their time to give genuine feedback back to you.
Yeah.
So
have you found that people are willing to give very honest feedback in these surveys? Like, is it always anonymous? Is it better to have them anonymous, to have it with people associated with them? What's the best approach?
In my view, it's anonymous. Best way to have it is anonymous, and it should be very strictly anonymous. You need to use a tool that gives them the confidence that is also anonymous.
Yeah.
Because the genuine feedback one-to-one, they will give you face-to-face, right? And they will try to do that. If they have something they feel that they are struggling to say face-to-face, at least they can have this portal on every year with anonymity to say it. And then when you get out the manager's reports, which usually you never get a report less than 5 people answer, because then you keep the anonymity, right? If there are 3 people, then it's very personal. If there are 5 and above, then you can get out the report and really discuss it.
Yeah.
But anonymity, and we're going to that later on as well.
Okay.
So the third pillar is business. You need to make engagement survey about business. So first we need to make it about the people, right? So we need to focus on the people when running the engagement survey, but we need to make the approach business-like, and we need to focus how this results to business results at the end. So when we're talking about engagement, we need to talk about dollars. Okay, how much does it cost me to have these engaged people? How much does it cost me to have? How much money can I make of having engaged people? And why should I run these initiatives that takes me time to measure them? And why should I have engagement targets when I don't know the dollar sign? And in my experience, this makes it even more interesting, not only to top management, but also to the managers, because they can see that because they increase the engagement of their teams, they probably save money or made money in the process, right? And it also becomes kind of personal to employees.
Do you ever run engagement surveys just for a specific team or a specific group of teams, or is it almost always the whole if you're going to do it, you do the whole organization at the same time, or is it ever like, we really need to know what's going on inside of the specific team, let's do a survey with them? Is it ever sort of individualized like that?
Yes, many times you can make it very individualized, but it's probably there is an issue or a process. It could be that you are trying to merge 2 teams, and you can run an engagement survey just on those 2 teams. Okay. But in general, you have certain dates that you run one every year or every 6 months.
Okay.
And then you use it very individually if you have certain issues or certain projects you want.
Okay, that makes sense.
Good. So 3 pillars to focus on. First, it needs to be aligned from the top, and everyone should agree why they're doing it, what will come out of this, what are the results what we're going to do with the results, and to keep the timeline. Communication, involve everyone, middle managers first, and then the employees. Everyone should be involved in this process, and they need to know why they're doing what they're doing. And the third, we need to make it about the business. And that's where we are going on the next slide, where it becomes a very, where we can see a normal process. So here we have like the process of an engagement survey. This is before engagement survey, during, and after. Many of us, we are focusing on just launching an engagement survey and then seeing the results. That's what usually is the focus about engagement surveys. And that's why they have so negative connection with people when they're hearing about engagement surveys, because they just have one, they see the results, and that's it. You don't hear after from anyone.
Yeah, you don't notice the actual like action items that come from it aren't communicated to the team, I assume, a lot of times. Like, people probably make the mistake. It's like the management team takes the information, they start setting something up, and then they don't communicate it to anyone what actually happened.
Exactly. Or they might throw a slide or 2 in the intranet so everyone can see about the whole company, but that's it. Good. So what can we do before an engagement survey? One of the things that we usually underestimate is decide the tool and the questions we're going to ask. Many times the questions are a lot, so it can take up to 1 hour for people to answer an engagement survey. It's important that we have simple questions. Those questions don't have like 100 questions for measure you're asking. After, you're going to have reports. So are you really having the time to go through all these reports from all these questions you answered? So be careful on what questions you are asking people. And after this webinar, I will send an example on how you can run a very short questionnaire, like 10 questions to people to start with. Then, Yeah, because then data will be anonymous, right? You don't know who is answering what. It's important that you do a data mapping beforehand, so you know how the reports will look like. So you make sure that you get the manager's reports out, so you can see the manager's team, how it looks like from the engagement perspective or from the department. It really depends on the structure of your organization. Make sure you do this data mapping in the tool and get it right, so you get the right reports out of it. Like we said before, like communicate. You cannot over communicate this. And it's almost always good to create a hype. Create a hype that, hey, we are launching again the engagement survey. Last year, we took these actions from the engagement survey. I'm wondering what this year will come up. Next week, we're going to have the engagement survey. Build the hype around that. That is also very important, that people know that the management cares. It doesn't need to come from the HR people only. The CEO can send an email out. The operational people can send an email out. And it's important that everyone is aligned to send that out. Clear message. Yeah.
Is it effective to have the CEO involved in this type of, to be like the person driving this? Like, what is the best people to drive this type of initiative inside the organization?
The reality is that in any HR initiative, if it's a joint initiative with the CEO, usually has more impact to the people.
Okay.
Because it is clear to everyone, this is taken seriously. So and I'm not saying do all the work as a CEO. It could be just the message coming out from you. Yeah. It could be just join a call with HR to announce the engagement survey. It could be simple, small things along the process that will reinforce the message that this is coming from the CEO and he cares about this. It's an important project.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah. We said again, expectations is to be clear what will happen after the engagement survey, why we're doing this, the message, the timeline, to ensure anonymity, communicate that, as we discussed before, Andrew, and to encourage everyone to give honest feedback, really. So these are just a few steps that you can do to make sure you have a smoothly run engagement survey. Then you launch an engagement survey, right? So an email goes out to everyone. Everyone knows already, by the way, that this is happening. It's Monday. Today we're receiving the engagement survey email. You can send reminders to anyone who didn't complete the survey and have a very short deadline. Make it 5 working days. That's the best. Yeah. Because someone is on maternity leave, someone is on vacation, someone is on sickness, that's fine. But it needs to be short to collect all the data. Don't leave it 3. If you say it's a 3 weeks deadline, everyone will say, I will answer it next week or in 2 weeks time.
And nobody does anything.
Nobody does it.
Then it's the last, then it's really like a 2-day thing. Because the last 2 days, people are like sending emails saying, no, you have to fill this out. Otherwise, anything with a long deadline never works.
Exactly. That's my experience as well. Then it should be pushed from the top management and middle managers to encourage the completion. So many tools of the engagement survey tools, they give you like a progression. How much progression do you have? And you can have progression per department. So if possible, if you have some kind of this tool, or even if it's some kind of manual through Microsoft Forms, you can still have these reports out. Then send them to the managers or to the top management to follow up. It could be, again, like we said, Andrew, the CEO gets in the 3rd day and say, hey guys, sends an email to everyone. We have 70% completion on day 3rd. Please, for everyone who can complete it by the next 2 days, that would be awesome.
Yeah, you got to keep everyone on task.
Yes. And what is impressive is that the highest completion rate you have is usually the highest engagement survey, positive engagement you will have in the results.
Really?
Because people care to bother and go in and answer the reports. You will see that if you have lower engagement, lower completion rates, you will probably have a lower positive engagement in your results.
Interesting. I mean, I've always seen that, like, one of the theories is in like reviews of restaurants is that only the people that are really upset are the ones that actually take time to leave the reviews, and the people that give good reviews, you really have to like incentivize them to do it. So it's interesting that it would have a correlation to the more responses, the more positive it is.
Yeah.
I guess it could go both ends. Like the more responses could be the most positive, or more responses super negative if things are really, really bad.
Yeah.
I guess. But then they would probably have quit the company by then. That would probably be the engagement would be shown through retention.
But even for a weird reason, if you get a very high completion rate and you have low engagement results, then you know, right? You got the feedback. That is also a blessing. Just having completion is a blessing as a company, because you have the results there. People told you actually that they are disengaged, and actually why, if you dig into the questions, right?
Yeah. No, that's the apathy is a pretty good engagement survey.
Yeah. If you don't care, you don't do anything.
Not even gonna fill this out.
Yeah. So most of the people usually think that's where the hard work is happening, is what you do before the engagement survey, you launch it, and then that's it, you collect the reports. But actually the hard work happens after. That's where most of the work is happening. That's why we have a bunch of lists here, a big column. So you're probably your HR team, you will get the results in, you will analyze them, they will start creating reports. Usually what happens is that you get an executive summary for the whole group, depending how many people you are. And they present this to the top management, like, this is the trends that we have. Usually you have reports per country, per department, you get a bunch of different results.
Yeah.
And then you also have, you usually announce the results on the intranet about the whole group. This is a simple report, the whole group, that's engagement. What's the more interesting is the reports to the managers, because that's where you can do a ton of things.
Yeah.
You have, let's say, 20 managers, each manager gets a report of, they have teams of 5 or 10. They just sit usually together with the manager and they discuss about, here is how the report looks like. Here is also how you compare with the company, right, with the whole group. Here are the comments employees added while completing the results. And then the real works happen, where together with the manager, you have at least 1 or 2 hours workshop, at least, together with their team. So you sit with the team, you put the results on screen, and you start discussing, hey guys, this is what we get, this is what you guys answered. What do you think? What can we do? How can we improve our engagement? Why this question is very low or that is very high?
How do you deal with this across different, across different departments or across different countries? I mean, like you're saying here, you know, there's different summaries for different groups, different departments. How do you focus on this when you get like all the managers together, figure out how we're gonna do this, and there's like clearly a few groups that are lagging behind and a few that are doing very well? How do you put those people together? How do you allow them to help each other?
Yes, so you get learnings from the positive managers, and you try to tell them or share these learnings. You get the manager to share, okay, after the workshop, they probably discuss their team. Here's why we are engaged, because we're doing all these things well. Because you need to also identify what you're doing well, right?
Yeah.
And then when we figure out, okay, they have so much positive engagement because they're doing well, let's share that with the rest of the managers. So we found that our engaged teams are actually doing these actions to be engaged. So maybe something that we can learn for everyone. But I try to avoid publicly sharing within managers their results, because it's not a competition.
So it's like a one-on-one sit down with each manager and go through it. Okay.
Yes. And different circumstances, right? Many different things, so many different operational things. Someone might have a bad customer. You never know. You need to be careful to not make it in a competition with the rest.
Okay.
Yeah. So the most important part actually is that workshop in this engagement survey, the workshop that is happening with the manager, the HR, and the team. That workshop, usually you get out what we're doing well and what we're not doing so well, or where we need to improve. You get suggestions, what you can do at a group level or at a team level. Usually, I really encourage team level actions because these are very easy to do. You don't wait for a power long away, a CEO to do something about you, but you do it within your team, right? If you think you should have a breakfast together every week and it will increase the engagement, do it. Have a breakfast, right? There are so many different things that you can do at the team level that you don't need approval from anyone, really. And then you get the suggested action. So the team comes and says, hey guys, we think as a company we should do this better. You get suggestions for the whole company. Then we come in the HR department, we consolidate all actions, and we say, okay, we see there are some trends here. People really want to do this, or they really want to do this. And we go to the board, we go to the CEO and say, hey, these are the trends. These are the feedback we get from all these workshops. All these people spend a ton of time, and they suggested to do this. And then we get approval for high-level initiatives. And every month, like you get financial reports, you get reports on where are the initiatives on the engagement.
Okay. What is a good, I mean, I know there's a lot of products out there that have been built. What's a good product to do some of these surveys? I mean, obviously, like, you could use something like Typeform, Google Forms, something simple, but then being able to take that information, actually like turning it into dashboards and turning it into data. Obviously, Lanteria could probably do some things around that. We could probably do a better job around it, and that's something that we would like to do in the future, which is why we're talking about a lot of this stuff. But interested to just hear other products. Feel free to promote them if you want.
There are so many products out there to measure engagement. All of them are quite good. I am in favor also for big surveys you can use, but you need to be conscious that you need to have time to discuss all the results afterwards. You need to have time to follow up on each one. You know, you get like a 10-page result, like culture, manager, organization, team. Make sure you have the time to actually discuss every subject within the team. Some they are very mature organizations. They already had something from before, and they take a step up and they say, okay, we're going to run these bigger surveys because we know it will give us more. But if I was me and getting started right now, I would probably use a SurveyMonkey. Use 10 questions I have in mind. I think they even have a built-in 10 questions from SurveyMonkey.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, like a template you can use for this. It's a very simple measuring tool. Is called Employee Net Promoter Score, ENPS. And it's you use it probably for customers, Andrew. I know lots of commercial people also use it. You can use it for your employees as well. It's so easy, so spot on, and you can tell so many things from ENPS and 10 questions, and that's it. And you can do a lot with these 10 questions. You can pinpoint if you have problem in this engagement in general, with managers, with your team, with training, with if you're proud working for the company, you can do a lot with the questions. Doesn't need to be a huge one.
Okay.
Good. So this is the one typical process on how an engagement survey should work. What do you do before, during, and after? What we discuss here mostly is how you get the people in the center of it, how we communicate a lot, how we do the workshops, how we hear people, and how we consolidate all this data, and we do it the right way. What is missing usually, and this is something we usually lack in the HR departments, is the business approach. So how do we have business metrics? Even when we get all these results, for lots of people in the management, they consider it very fluffy still. Okay, what it means that we have 30 people disengaged. Okay, they're disengaged. What do you want me to do? What that mean for our business?
Yeah.
And here is a very simple way to make it about the business. A disengaged employee, when someone is disengaged, usually you lose 34% of their salary.
Interesting.
So,
I'd be interested to hear the math.
Yes, there's tons of research you can get from.
Super precise number.
That's a very average number. It can get up to 150%. So if we assume that a very senior leader is disengaged, imagine the damage a very senior leader can do to your customers, to your employees, cross-functionally. It's a huge damage a senior leader can do when they're disengaged.
Yeah.
But on average, we use this number that is also very conservative. So this is from research coming from, I believe it's LinkedIn, this research, and some of it Gallup, coming from sickness, from losing productivity, from creating frustration within the team, and things like that. Very simple things. So imagine that if someone is sitting there disengaged, they don't want to be here, they're probably spending their time on something else or making someone else miserable, in short.
Yeah. That's worse. That's the worst one.
So that's a very way to think of why do we lose the money, or they're wasting their time, 34% of their time, or losing someone else's time, actually, or 34%. So if you have a highly engaged employee, probably they go above and beyond, right? So they will not just use their time, they will use 150% of their time. But just to make it simple, we don't need to get into big statistics. Just imagine this on average is true. 34% of the salary of someone is lost. So let's have an example. Let's imagine something. We have 100 people company. We get the average salary of these 100 people because the survey is anonymous, right? We don't know who answered what.
Yeah.
So let's say 100 people, average salary of these people is $50K per year, dollars. And we figured out from the survey that 20 people are disengaged. Then how can we find the disengagement cost? We simply multiply 20 disengaged people by the average salary by 34% of the salary. And we result with $340K disengagement cost.
Interesting. That's pretty amazing.
Put things in perspective, right? When you, so it's a different thing to come and tell you, as a CEO, Andrew, we have 20 people disengaged. Okay. And the different thing to come and tell you, Andrew, we are spending $340K every year on people who are disengaged.
Yeah. Yeah, losing the sufficiency, basically.
Yeah.
So what are some examples, like at least in your career or things you've heard, that have been implemented from an engagement survey, like from the results of doing this, that somebody implemented something and it actually resulted in a significant improvement?
It is usually very individual, right? You can do it at a team level. You can find at a team level what's going on and resolve it. But a very common thing is you have very bad leadership. That's the most common thing ever.
But what do you do then? Like chop off their heads, or
yes, that's what we, in my experience. No, just kidding. So what we do, you do actually leadership training. So you train managers. Usually, all managers, they go from individual contributors, best performers. You put them on top. They're the managers. Yeah. But they are not trained. They don't know how to manage engagement. They don't know how to manage people. And that's what you do. You train them. You give them the tools, and then they can better train people. And you can actually see that the disengagement cost goes down because they know how to manage a team. Yeah.
Interesting. I'm sure there's probably examples of people that can't be coached, that they're just individual contributors, and that's who they are, and you can't really do much about it.
Many times it's another point, but many times it's also a bit unfair for them because they want to progress. Maybe they don't want to become managers, but they feel they need to because there is the next level. Instead, they could be a very senior, same paid as a manager, member of the team,
Yeah.
working alone somewhere, right? They don't need to be managers if they don't want to. Sometimes we force them into it because they're very good at performance.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's the theory of like the 10x engineer inside of like software development, that you have like people that are way better. I mean, that's the theory like behind Netflix. And Netflix, their whole culture was built on having these like 10x people that were all in there. And that they actually, I remember the famous story is they did these huge layoffs right before they went into their IPO, and all the people were happier after the layoffs. Like, yeah, I don't have to deal with this like terrible engineer that I was dealing with. Now I just have time to just do my things. And it's pretty amazing. It was like they found out that it's like, well, I didn't want to manage those 3 engineers. I could just do all this myself and we would get it done faster. And then they realized like, wow, we actually just need to hire the best people and give them freedom and allow them to do it, which is, I mean, they're obviously like one of the most extreme examples in all business, but it's
spot on. And that's in my experience, the root of this engagement cost is about managers. So they can do so many things to increase engagement. And you will probably see managers who are very good at managing people. After they see the survey, they will do tons of it. They will use it as a tool. They will do their best to engage their team. And you will see people that they are not so into it. They will not really take it seriously. They will not spend time. They will try to avoid it. Good. And then we do this, right? We know that this engagement cost. And that's how, as an HR department, CEOs and the board can take us more seriously, right? So when I come to you and say, I want to run a leadership training that costs 100,000, then you say, are you crazy? 100,000 leadership training to all managers. But then, I show you this and I say, hey, I believe if we do this and several other activities, we will drop the disengagement cost by 200,000. Let's say, then you make it about the business results. You talk business.
Yeah.
And then you track over time the engagement cost. So how much was it this year? How much is it next year? And you cannot know exactly, but you know the initiatives you had. You are tracking them over time every year. You know what worked and what didn't work in your teams. You did some major changes in some departments, and you can see this engagement cost going up or going down. So you have a very, let's say, business approach into the engagement survey that makes sense also to the board and to the CEO. And something that is very important, I see that mistake happening lots of time. Benchmark with your company over time, not with others.
Within your own company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of people get into the trap. Okay, these are the results. Okay, what are the competitors' engagement survey results like?
Yeah.
It's so different circumstances, so different things that are affecting your engagement. It doesn't really matter. It matters a bit the trends out there, like we know that roughly 15% of every organization are disengaged people. So if you have like double of that, it's good to know that on general, something is maybe more wrong. Okay. But it's yourself you need to go against to improve, because you only know how your teams are structured, your organization is structured, the initiatives taking place, the changes taking place. You cannot go and compare every year or year by year with others. That's, in my opinion, is a waste of energy and time.
Yeah.
Be aware of the trends. Spend a lot of time comparing with yourself, and even as a manager, compare with yourself over the year. That's something to look for, and that's something to know, and compare with each question as well, right? So how I did in this question and the other question, and then you can do something about
it. Is there a time where you change the questions? I mean, obviously you want to benchmark against what happened, but like, what is an example of where a certain question really just isn't bringing anything to the results, and you make a change? Is that something that you usually do, or is that something that you want to keep the same questions?
I would like to avoid that, especially if you care long-term for a company, I would like to avoid that. That's why I am very in favor for simple engagement surveys. You start very small, start with 5, 10 questions. Then you never change them. When you are mature enough, add 10 more, add 20 more. And then you, of course, if you find that this is useless, right? I don't get anything out of this. I never use it. It doesn't make sense. You can remove it, but it might hurt you long term on compare, giving a different experience.
Okay.
It's like half of the value, at least the metrics, is comparing with yourself over time. When you run it the first year, you're usually a bit in the dark. You see the results like, what does it mean? Is it good? Is it bad? You don't know. When you run it the next year, you're like, makes sense. You see the departments, makes sense.
Yeah.
You imagine everything that happened in the organization. It makes sense. You are able to articulate it. You are able to put a number and some metrics, and you are able to tackle it and resolve it. That's like half of the metrics having to do with yourself over time as a company.
No, that's an interesting point of this. I actually when you first started explaining this, I hadn't thought of that you're really benchmarking against the year before. I was thinking of it more as initiatives or things that you were engaging with that were sort of short term, but I guess it makes more sense thinking of this as a multi-year benchmark that you're trying to create.
Yeah.
Like I said before, I've never worked in a large organization, so for me, these can be foreign concepts. So I was very interested to hear about this.
Good. And of course, every month as a CEO, if employees know that every month, like you're reviewing your financial results, you are reviewing the engagement actions, and they know you're doing that, and you're giving updates every now and then, and you're trying to make sure everything is completed as agreed at the beginning. Managers and people really take seriously to make a happy workplace. They take it seriously that everyone really is engaged and trying their best. Yeah.
No, it's super important. I mean, like you said, it has a huge impact on the bottom line and on top line and the bottom line. So it's super interesting.
Yeah. And that was my main points about the engagement survey and how to add value.
So I figure we can open this up to questions from anyone that's here as an attendee. I mean, I have some further questions, but I'll leave it to you guys to ask first because I've already asked several and had the chance. So we can open it up to them. I don't know if I have the possibility to do that or Alina, if you do. But feel free to raise your hands and we can open it up to all the attendees as well.
I cannot see a chat actually. Do we have a chat here?
There's a chat down below and you can see all the participants, but I don't see anyone that's raising their hand. So, I mean, I can ask.
Yeah, let's give 2-3 minutes and maybe if you have any question, Andrew, until anyone wants to ask something.
Yeah, so why is this something like I would actually be interested to see from the audience, like from the people that are attending, if they would raise their hands to say if they are currently doing engagement surveys, because for me, this is something that I've heard of. I'm not really that familiar with. I'm interested to know, like, why is this something that companies don't value more? Why is this something that more companies don't do?
At least I can answer that from my experience, Andrew, and until anyone else writes on the chat. I don't see the chat or the people. I don't know why, but I trust that you see it.
I see the chat.
Yes. In my view, at least from the management perspective, it's something that it's considered it takes a lot of their time.
Yeah.
You get fluffy results and has nothing to do with the business. So that was why I really wanted to focus on the business metrics, because that's the way to convince the management to take seriously and positive engagement and put a dollar sign on that.
Yeah.
People usually, the reason that why people don't enjoy engagement surveys, that I heard of that as well, I don't want another engagement survey, I don't want to complete another thing. It's because they don't see the results, they don't do a workshop afterwards, they are not involved. They're just asked through a questionnaire to give their input, and then everything disappears.
Yeah.
Or they get the results, they put it on a drawer, and nobody sees the results again.
Yeah. No, that's a huge issue with a lot of different initiatives within a company.
Yeah.
I see Jill has her hand up. I don't know if she has to ask through the chat or if, Alina, I don't know if we can open this up to other people to use microphones or audio, but.
We have two questions in our questions and answers section. Can you see it? We have two questions from Stefanos and Elias.
No, I don't see it. Where
Can you show us the question, Alina?
There we go. The question and answer section. Wow. So the Zoom there's all these different buttons down. This is different than a regular Zoom. So now I see. Let's see. What is the percentage of positive approach from companies when discussing doing these kinds of surveys?
What is the percentage of?
So I'm not sure if I understand the way it was written. So like, what is the percentage of positive approach from? So I guess what is the, sorry, Stefanos, if you want to ask it again, I didn't really understand the writing of it. So Elias wrote, how can we convince senior management that engagement survey is a very helpful tool, knowing that there is a stubbornness in the way decisions are made and how the company does things? So they have a company where obviously upper management is a little bit stubborn about things. How do they convince them that this should be used? It's probably pretty common problem.
Yeah, and that's really why I thought it's so important, the business metrics. Make it simple, right? Just 10 questions. Don't present them like 100 questions and like a huge survey and a huge process. Make it very simple. Make it about the business, and then show the results in numbers. Then I think they will be convinced. If it's something like a 3-slide executive summary, a 2-slide process, how this will look like we showed here, right? Make a simple version of this. This is what we're going to do before, during, after. And after, we're going to get this result and show, I will also, as I said before, I will send out an example of how a report will look like. Show them what you will get out of it, and that will able to know its engagement cost. And I think you will pretty much got that if you also tell them this will cost nothing but time, and I think it's worth it. And then we see what we do after with initiatives.
Andreas will also share some examples of questions. I was going to ask you for some example questions, but he said before that he can share some example questions. So we'll send them out in an email to everyone that signed up. So I don't know, Elias, maybe that'll help you be able to convince to say, like you said, this is a report. These are questions that could be helpful, and then adapt it to your own company culture. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I guess, are there examples where an HR director or someone in the company just goes out and does this initiative themselves and then shows that results to the upper management? Like where they say, hey, look what's going on here. We did this ourselves in our own initiative. I don't know. That could be a way to avoid that too.
Yeah, that could be a way. Usually is not very effective, but it could. But you never know. If that's your only route of action, then you can do it. But also interesting to hear from you, Andrew. What would you like to see to be convinced? Like you never done something like this before, you said.
No.
And how are you seeing after seeing this report now? What do you think? It would be good to have one, or?
Yeah, I mean, we're a fully remote team. So for me, I would actually like to have these types of things really regularly to be able to hear from our team. Even not in a way that it's like an event type of thing. I'd like it to be something that we might be able to get just constant feedback, especially just being remote. I mean, it's super hard. You have people all over the world. You want to know how they're feeling, how they're doing, how they feel about the business. And for me as like a CEO, oftentimes feel detached from that. And oftentimes I'm like so focused on results that I'm not thinking about, how do they feel about the business? What would they like to be doing? Obviously, in remote culture, everyone wants to do like quarterly offsites, and sometimes that's not possible. So it is hard to find that balance. And I think it's important in this type of environment. So I am going to think about this and figure out ways to do it and to be more constant than to do it as like an event.
A tip, another thing for what you mentioned is people, when you have the more surveys you have, the more polls you have, the less answers you get.
Yeah.
So
but
people get
that's like NPS. Like NPS scores, it's like you just can do the smiley face, like smiley face, sad face. Because even if you put the one in the middle that's like, it was kind of okay, you get way less engagement from those. If it's not just like thumbs up, thumbs down, those are the best ones, because that's like all people have time for it.
Are willing to do.
Yeah.
And the reason is because what are you doing with them after? That's something. What is it for me to give you my feedback for my day, if it's every day, let's say? Because I know you're doing nothing with them. Okay, you see a metric somewhere, but if you're doing something with it, that's why it's important to be an event and to be involved with others. Then people will actually, if you do it the right way, you'll probably get 100% of completion rate at some point, because they know it's about them and not about anyone else.
Sorry, there's a couple more questions we'll try and get through. So Stefano's asked, how do top tier managers usually react when conducting these types of workshops afterwards? So the workshops of like trying to get the information and then also trying to improve. What is their reaction?
Yeah, they usually know that something was there. So if it was something very bad, they're usually even preparing to it, or they are getting out like, okay, I expected that to happen. And that's why it's important to have this dedicated process, because then they're somehow forced or setting the time to deal with it. So it's unlikely that you get something you didn't expect. And if you get that unexpected result, from the report before you go into the workshop.
Yeah.
You have a debrief also from the HR explain you the report. So it's usually something that you expect. Sometimes they are in denial when you have a debrief with them about the report. They don't want to admit that my team is doing so bad, they is so disengaged, or they will try to blame other factors. Is this customer, or is this situation that happened? My hands are tied. The usual thing you will hear from someone who has a very disengaged team would be these answers. Yeah. But it's human. It's really human to react like this at the beginning. Yeah. And that's why it's important to train managers to be able to deal with these kind of situations. Because even if you're the best manager, at some point you would likely have a disengaged team for one reason or another.
There's actually a great tool. I actually use this called Leadership Circle that they're based in the US, and they do a really good job of taking these surveys. We've done it with our team they survey, the people that are under you, your direct reports, also people that work sort of on the same level as you, could be shareholders. And I actually shared in the chat. I would recommend it as a tool after this. If you see there are problems, or if you see there are surprises, this is a great tool to be able to help you as a leader to focus more on they call it creative mind. So working on things that are more positive, proactive, rather than reactionary. A lot of times the poorest managers are the ones that are very reactionary. They're very dictatorial. They want to control everything. And they're always reacting to situations where the engagement survey, the idea of that and things like Leadership Circle is to be more proactive and to be pushing towards the future. So I put it in the chat. So anyone that's still here, I would recommend, if you do an engagement survey, this is a good compliment, that if there's some surprises and leadership needs some coaching, this is a great tool to use there too. Let's see, there is one more question. When a team member gives low or bad scores on an engagement survey, the team manager sometimes can get frustrated that it's an anonymous survey, that they don't know who said this. Do you have any advice to team managers on how to deal with that frustration?
Yeah, very good point. It's definitely not a personal attack. It could be, but it's usually not a personal attack. It's someone expressing, their concern or that they're not happy where they are. It could be something unrelated, even with the manager. They're unhappy in the current role, or with the company, or with their client potentially.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's something a manager needs to get comfortable with, that some people will be disengaged in their team, and this is natural. The most important is to open that conversation, is to not try to find out, especially in this process. What you get, what the managers can get in the loop is, like they said, you get these 10 people and you can see one of them what is engaged, like 10% is put 0 or something on something. Yeah. And they are like, okay, who is that one? I think is that person. You can get in that mode. It doesn't matter. That's not an individual feedback. Individual meetings is a different thing. Yeah. Here you're going to sit with a team of 10 people and you're going to discuss, hey guys, we know someone is extremely unhappy. What can we do as a team to lift everyone up? Yeah. What if everyone does something wrong and something we're doing well and something we should improve, and then slowly get out there what an issue might be. Yeah.
No, I agree. It is frustrating. I've done these types of surveys before. Like I said, like Leadership Circle, they do that stuff.
Yeah.
And you get a lot of times it's in, because I don't know in the engagement survey if you also should ask for like a written feedback. So sometimes it's like just direct questions, but then it's like, what is some extra feedback you would want to get? And somebody that gives that extra feedback, you're like, I wish, for me at least, oftentimes it's because they didn't give enough. They said something, they mentioned it, and you say, okay, that was interesting, but you just wrote one sentence. I'd like to discuss it, but you don't want to call them out and say, who said this?
Yes.
Because it loses the anonymity and kind of breaks that barrier. But
but it is interesting then, right? You have a team of 10 people. One of them at your one-on-one is extremely unhappy. Let's say, that. Then try to dig and find out not who is there, but what can you do more about each one of them? Yeah. And you will probably resolve the problem at the end.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. That's all the questions I believe that we had. Let me check through. Yeah, those were all the questions. I really enjoyed this, Andreas. This was super helpful for me, and I'll keep you updated on my own journey into the engagement survey, because that's something I think I'd like to start doing and seeing how we might be able to implement this. And thank you for everyone for joining us. We will, like I said, we'll be sharing some of the things we mentioned. Andreas will share some of these questions. And if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to email us, reach out to us. And I think Andreas's information is on here. And then we'll also be sharing this on YouTube and sharing the recording to anyone that participated. So you can go back and revisit this wonderful conversation and be able to learn more. So thank you everyone for coming, and thank you, Andreas, for putting this all together. This was really interesting and really helpful, at least for me.
Thank you, Andrew, for this session, and thank you everyone for attending. Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye.